Welcome back to Reading Biblical Hebrew for Beginners, Part 1. Today we're going to talk about the vowels. I've subtitled this The Masoretic Preservation of Meaning. The Masoretes are who we might talk about as the ones who came up with our current vowel pointing system for the Hebrew text. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Before we get to the new vowel material, I just wanted to cover one more thing that we really kind of covered already, but I'm going to go over this again in maybe a slightly different way. As we learned in the last video, the letters Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, and Tav may occur with a dot, which originally changed the pronunciation. For our purposes, only the letters Beit, Kaf, and Pei will change pronunciation. Also, the four guttural letters, Aleph, He, Chet, and Ayin, Resh is a semi-guttural letter, originally pronounced deep in the throat, display certain peculiarities. For the top part here, one way you can remember which letters occur with a dot, you can call them the Begad Kafat letters. If you look at each of the letters here, it's a Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pei, and Tav. So when you put those together, we find Begad Kafat. While the vowels were not written in the original text, they do make a difference in meaning. Imagine if English didn't have vowels and you had to read with only consonants. How would you read this word? NN. Nine, none, non, noon, none, nana, Anna, etc. You can probably think of many others. Native speakers would be able to tell from context, but over time, the need arose to preserve the understanding of the text. Vowels probably started to be added around the time of Ezra, but did not come to its current state until the Middle Ages. One thing I want to add is there's evidence within the Dead Sea Scrolls that the vowels were already being added by that time, though they didn't have the more complicated system that we see that was done by the Masoretes. The Dead Sea Scrolls did include many of what we might call historically long vowels, which we'll get to in just a moment. Now we're going to look at the vowels. In Hebrew, there are 5 classes of vowels: A class, E class, I class, O class, and U class. The A class vowels, there are 2 of them here. There are both short and long. The short vowel is patah. We see that over here on the left. Patah. And it makes the sound as ah in father. And if we were to transliterate it, we would just write an A. Then for the long vowel, it is like this little T over here underneath of the letter. It's called a kamates, and it also makes the same sound, A as in father, ah. If we transliterate it, we would write it as the long A symbol. For our purposes, except for the E-class vowels, when we pronounce these vowels, there's not going to be anything that distinguishes between the short and the long. When it comes to these A-class vowels, as well as what you'll see later on, both the short and the long make the same sound, but it does make a difference. You need to know which ones are long and which ones are short. With the E-class vowels, we have 4 of them here. One is short, and 3 of them are long. The short E-class vowel we have is Segol. The Segol is just these 3 little dots here. It looks like a little cluster of grapes, and it makes the sound as a short E as in pet, pet. The transliteration will just be a letter E. And then for the long vowels, this one is called tsere, tsere. With this, it's an E as in they, and the transliteration we would write is the long E transliteration. Then what we find is sereyod, sereyod. This is a combination of the sere that we see above, along with a yod. This is what we call a historic long vowel. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. It makes the sound E as in they. Notice it's the same sound here. And the transliteration would be this E with the little arrow on top. Then finally we see this Segol yod. The Segol yod makes the same sound. It makes E as in they, and the transliteration it would be an EY. Notice all of these long vowels make the same sound. These long E-class vowels all make the same sound. A as in they. Sere makes an A. Sereyod makes an A sound. And then Segol yod makes an A sound. The Segol, on the other hand, the short version, it makes an as in pet. Next we come to the I-class vowels. We again have both short and long. They will both make the same sound, but we do need to distinguish between the short and the long, and that will become important later. The short I-class vowel is called the Hirik. It's just a little dot there underneath of the letter. Hirik makes the sound E as in the word be. Transliteration, if we were to write this out, we would put in the letter I, but remember the sound that it makes is an E, as in the word be. Same here with the long vowel. We have a Hirik yod. Hirik yod. The sound that it makes is an E as in the word be, and the transliteration again would be the letter I, except it has this little arrow on the top of it. Again, this Hirik yod is a historic long vowel, and I will again get into that a little bit later. And then we come to the O-class vowels. There are 3 O-class vowels, 1 short and 2 of them are long. The short O-class vowel is called Kamet Hatuf. That's called Kamet Hatuf. It is an O as in note, and the transliteration would just be simply the letter O. The long vowel, we'll pronounce it exactly the same. O as in note. But it's called a holum. And the holum is right here at the top of the letter. It's just a little dot over on the left side. Then we also have what's called the holum vav. The holum vav is just what it looks like. It's got a vav there with a holum above it. That's actually a historic long vowel. Notice the historic long vowels each have a consonant letter attached to them. A reason for that is that in the history of the Hebrew language, as I mentioned before, the text was written without vowels originally. It was just written as consonants. And around the time of Ezra or so, they began to put symbols in to try to preserve the pronunciation, to try to preserve the meaning of the text. And the first things they did were to use these consonant letters as a form of a vowel. I believe the term is mater lectionis, the mother of learning. Um, and this occurs with both a vav and the yod, using those as vowels instead of the consonants. You can find these even in the Dead Sea Scrolls, um, whereas the later vowels that were put in by the Masoretes don't come until later on down the road. And then the U-class vowels. The short U-class vowel is called the kibbutz. The kibbutz, it's just those 3 dots there in a row descending. That makes the U sound as in flute. And the transliteration would be the letter U. And then also we have the shurik. The shurik will be there to the left of the letter. And it's a historic long vowel, so it's going to have this vav with a dot in the middle of it. It is not a dogish. When you write that vav with a dot in the middle of it, that is the letter itself. It's called the shurik. And it makes the sound of U as in flute. Transliteration, you have this U with the little arrow over the top of it. And that is all of the classes of vowels, the A class, E class, I class, O class, and U class. Then we come to what's called the schwa. Now, we're going to have a section on the schwa when we get to a later chapter. But for now, Hebrew also has what's called the schwa, 2 vertical dots under the letter, like what we see right here. 2 vertical dots under the letter. It's transliterated as that little upside down E that's kind of in a superscript here, often indicating an indistinct vowel sound or a slurred sound, like the E in the word schwa. Notice I don't pronounce it shiwa, I pronounce it schwa. Some observations on these short vowels. You notice as we learn this language, as we become more familiar, when we get down the road, we'll see these vowels behave in certain ways. And they will shorten and lengthen as we learn to create these forms of words. And some things you need to remember are here. Short vowels may reduce to a schwa. That's pretty much any short vowel. Any short vowel may reduce to a schwa. And then short vowels may lengthen to long vowels. For example, a patah may lengthen to a kametz. And then a hirik may lengthen to a sareh. And a kametz hatuf may lengthen to a holum. The lengthening or reducing of vowels will be considered later. Then finally, I don't want to leave this out. If you notice, the kametz looks exactly the same as the kametz hatuf. Of course, you have the same name for both of these. The difference will be found in the context. There are certain kinds of syllables that will always have a long vowel, and there are certain kinds of syllables that will always have a short vowel. If you find a syllable that requires a long vowel, you're going to have a kametz. This kametz here is, remember, the long vowel. If you have this symbol occurring in a place that requires a short vowel, then you're going to have the kametz hatuf, which remember makes the O sound. And then on the long vowels written with the vav or yod, holam vav or hirik yod, for example, are historic long vowels. These vowels never reduce to a short vowel or a schwa. Historic long vowels may be written defectively, partially, that is, without the yod or the vav. The historic long hirik yod, then, may be written hirik yod, or defectively, partially, as just the hirik. A dot under a letter, therefore, may be short hirik, or an historic long hirik yod, written defectively. And distinguishing these options will be considered later. You'll be able to tell from the context once we get to that point. Then kametz, sere, and holam, not historically long vowels, can lengthen they have lengthened secondarily from short vowels. That's where they come from, is when they the position that they are in the word, the shifting of the accents and things like that causes them to lengthen to these. We'll consider that more later. Finally, I should have left this on the other video, but I do want to give acknowledgement. Most of the way I understand Hebrew and the way I understand how to teach Hebrew, I owe to my teacher from when I was in seminary, Russell Fuller. He wrote the grammar that I use, An Invitation to Biblical Hebrew, a beginning grammar. It was by him and his doctoral student, Mr. Choi. It's published by Kriegel in 2002. And also, I've used a little bit of material from A Practical Grammar for Classical Hebrew by J. Feingreen. It was the second edition, published by Oxford University Press in 1959. Thanks for hanging out this far on the video. Please take the time to learn these concepts, to know what these vowels are called, to be able to identify them, and we will be able to practice that some when we come to class. Looking forward to seeing you.